allowed to operate here, but rather a question of when. So, where do we stand? Anita Bath joins us now. And so, Anita, are we any closer than we were 6 months ago?
Well, it really depends on who you talk to, Andrew. So for a while, the province and even some cities were adamantly against services like Uber coming here. Most eventually realized it seems to be inevitable. And once that realization was announced out loud, many assumed services like Uber would be functioning here fairly quickly. But since the change of heart took place in January, there doesn't seem to have been a lot of progress, and there's actually been a lot of criticism toward the province on that note. Now, the most that has happened, well, the province has had discussions with key stakeholders. So I'm talking people like the taxi industry, ride-sharing companies, accessibility groups, cities, tourism groups. Now, a few weeks ago, the province came out with a report on its discussions. Problem is, now it wants more feedback on that report and hasn't given any sort of timeline to collect that. So today I asked Minister Peter Fassbender, he's one of the ministers in charge along with Todd Stone, about why the government seems to be sort of sitting on its hands when it comes to moving forward. Here's what he had to say.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that we're doing it right. We're doing a made in BC solution. That's why we have taken time to make sure that we do it right. And so I don't think we're behind. I think we're doing what we need to do for the sake of our consumers and our people here in British Columbia.
So, Nita, through all this, I mean, Uber making its pitch today at the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade, but what is it about British Columbia specifically where they have struggled for so long to come up with a model that actually works?
Well, I was trying to figure this out today, so I had to read through the report, and I chatted for a while with Minister Fassbender, and I can tell you there are a few things the province feels needs to be worked out. So insurance is one of them. Right now, there is no coverage for part-time flexible vehicles for hire. That's what companies like Uber are called. Now, currently, vehicle owners would have to actually purchase a taxi or limo license or insurance. That's a lot higher priced, and it's for full-time, higher-risk commercial use vehicles, so it doesn't really fit into the model that Uber wants to use. The province's new insurance model is needed to look at things like how much someone would drive and if it's a personal vehicle versus a leased one. Then you've got vehicle safety. So chances are when you take an Uber, I've taken Ubers around the world, and every time I've gone into a different type of vehicle. Sometimes it's, a very nice one, sometimes it's not so great. Right now, there's no legislation looking at inspecting ride-hailing vehicles and making sure they are safe to operate, so that needs to come in as well. Then you get to driver credentials. Now, we've all heard the horror stories of drivers around the world who have been accused of doing bad things to passengers. So one of the other things that Peter Fassbender spoke with me about today is developing a model to make sure criminal record checks are done properly for every Uber driver and that no one is getting past that. Then you have a level playing field. So the taxi industry is the big one in this. You see the same issue in most cities around the world grappling with Uber. Taxis want to make sure that everything is equal for them and that they're not subjected to stricter conditions than an Uber driver would be. So the province is definitely keeping that in mind. Now, Peter Fassbender tells me that they are still on track to have a plan in place before the election, which is in May.
All right, Anita Bath, live on our program tonight. Thanks a lot. Now we've got David Plouffe joining us right now, who's the chief advisor for Uber. He's joined us from downtown near Canada Place today. And so, David, just in terms of some of those sticking points, whether we're talking about licensing, insurance, background checks, on which issues would you say you and the province are farthest apart right now?
Well, I think, Andrew, when you step back, so all around the world, whether it be Asia, South America, most of North America, a lot of Canada, Toronto, Edmonton, Ottawa, folks have moved forward to embrace ride sharing. So in a regulated way. So every province is unique, every city is unique, but for the most part, there's commonality. This isn't rocket science. I mean, we know what to do. And so, most of the regulations provide some public safety assurances on criminal and driver record checks, insurance requirements, but also make sure the barrier to entry is low enough so that a teacher or retiree or student, if they want to drive a few hours a week, can do that. So again, I think we're confident that eventually we'll get a solution here, but I would say that, Vancouver is now the largest city on the continent without ride sharing. And We want more people sharing cars, carpooling, making money driving, reducing drunk driving. None of that's happening on scale here in Vancouver. So this isn't just about like, should Uber operate or not? How does that compare to taxi? There's some pretty big things happening around the world, and we'd certainly like to see British Columbia be a part of it.
You know, I'm curious, several months ago, Uber actually advertised, posting jobs for drivers, looking for Vancouver drivers for Uber in this city. And clearly, Uber does not actually operate in this city. What was the point of that, and how far did you get?
Right. Well, we've done that in other parts of the world too. We want to get prepared, obviously. And the response was remarkable. I think we had, well over 15,000 people express interest. Think about that. Even in a city of the size of Vancouver, that's a huge number of people.
I guess I wonder, though, if maybe that rubs governments the wrong way, that maybe it comes off as a bit arrogant to look for hiring for drivers when you don't even operate in the city, this kind of shoot first, ask questions later approach.
Well, again, we just want to get ready. As I said, we've had 200,000 people download the app on the rider side. We've had thousands and thousands of people say they want to get going. So, the world's a fast-moving place. And Vancouver and BC are behind the rest of the world in terms of embracing ride-sharing. So when we're able to move forward, we want to be ready to go right away.
Just on that point, let me ask you, realistically, how soon do you think we can expect to see Uber up and running in Vancouver?
Well, we'd like to see it as soon as possible. I certainly think the holidays are an important time because we see all over the world many people apply to drive on the platform just for those few weeks, because the holidays are a wonderful time of the year, but they're also a source of great economic anxiety. Paying for travel, paying for events, for gifts. A lot of people use Uber so they don't overload their credit card. And obviously you think about all the parties and events and people who might have a few cocktails. Right now, it's too hard, particularly if you're suburban in a Surrey or North Vancouver. Very difficult to get to and from. And so with Uber, you press a button and you make sure you're safe. So we'd like to see it as soon as possible. We think certainly the holidays would be a good opportunity, but as soon as possible, because again, there's major cities around the world. We've been in Toronto for 4 years or so, who've had ride sharing. It's become an important part of the economy and the transportation sector. And obviously that's not been the case here in Vancouver.
Well, David Plouffe, we appreciate you taking the time to join us here on the program. Thanks.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.